As we begin, we see a man running through an abyss of darkness with an object in his hand, which appears to be some sort of a chest. As he is running, he is being chased by some enemies, which do not share an appearance akin to those of humans, but rather to some phantom hybrids, their faces covered with hoods. They are chasing the man, on horses, and even the horses do not appear to look normal and look as something alike to a cross between demons and phantoms. The man pants as he runs and curses out at the enemies chasing him. He ruminates as to how the enemies found the location of the object with which he is running from them. He suddenly comes to a screeching halt as he finds himself on the edge of a cliff. He looks back with fear as the men on horses are getting closer to him, the sounds of the hooves clopping getting louder and louder. The horses also come to a halt as they grunt at the man in anger. The man, still holding the object in hand, points his staff at the enemies as a kind of warning not to approach him. He clenches his teeth and says to himself, "They came all the way here. Does that mean that they already found other pieces of Shell? The enemies all attack the man, while he deflects all the attacks with only a staff, using only a single hand. He again says to himself, "If they take this from me, it will be the end of Alea," referring to the chest in his hand. With no other choice in front of him, he makes a drastic decision. He opens the chest and absorbs the content into himself, into his own body. After absorbing it, he becomes very strong, as if he has gained a superpower. An enemy jumped and tried to attack him, but he very strongly slashed the enemy, instantly tearing it apart. This caused a power surge explosion to occur, akin to that of a supernova of a massive star. We end the scene with a very bright, blinding flash. In the next scene, we fast forward 24 years into the future since the supernova-like explosion. In the scene, we see two people standing in front of a wooden house. A young boy and a girl practice fighting each other. The young boy attacks the girl using an energy ball, but the girl easily deflects it using her hand. After that, the boy gets frustrated and attacks using a wooden sword in his hand, but the girl very swiftly moves away, dodging the attack. She gets behind the boy and attacks him, which frustrates him even more, and we see tears in his eyes. A person named Elhile is introduced in the next frame. He says to the boy, whose name is Durand, that he is too impatient and that he is old enough to stop easily predictable attacks. He praises the girl, whose name is Iris, saying she is too strong for Durand. Durand lashes out, saying, "Do you think it's easy to fight against a summoner? It will be easy for you, Elhile, because you're a summoner too." Elhile had summoned Iris to practice fighting with Durand, so he brings out a book and summons Iris back to where he had first summoned her from, while replying to Durand that he is exaggerating and that he never said it was easy. Elhile says that to blame the opponent for being strong is the same as admitting that a person is weak. Durand dislikes what Elhile is saying and ignores him. Elhile asks Durand why he keeps avoiding becoming a summoner, to which Durand replies, "It's because he keeps failing, while being sad and crumpling some grass in his hand. While being melancholy, he says that he is not qualified to become a summoner like his mom, whose name was Rhea." Elhale attempts to console Durand, saying how his mother also repeatedly failed to summon numerous times at first, but she never gave up. He says, "What's important is not that you don't fail, but when you do," but gets interrupted by Durand as he screams at Elhale to stop, and that he doesn't want to hear anything about a mom who he doesn't even remember, and that he doesn't want to hear any further lectures. He mumbles, "Why do you keep asking me to try everything my mom did? I'm not her," as he scoffs. He gets interrupted by his uncle, whose name is Horner, as he says, "You're right. You're not Raya. You're just who you are, Durand." Uncle Horner tells Elhile to not push Durand too hard, to which Elhile sighs and tells Uncle Horner that it doesn't help if he keeps always taking Durand's side. Durand hugs Uncle Horner and says he is the only one who truly understands him and insults Elhail, saying, "That old elf looks young, but he's lived over 100 years already. There's no way that elf Gramp will understand how I feel." Uncle Horner says to Durand, "Okay, then are you ready to have some fun with me?" To which Durand replies, saying he is not going to train with Uncle Horner anymore, as he doesn't even control his power for Durand at all. Uncle Horner starts flexing his muscles and tells Durand that if he wants to be popular among girls, he has to start building muscle like him on a regular basis. Durand then says something, making fun of Uncle Horner, which hits Uncle Horner right in the chest. He asks Uncle Horner that if that is the case, why hasn't he married still? Uncle Horner feels embarrassed at this and throws Durand in the air, calling him a smart-ass, smarty pants. Durand falls and lands on Uncle Horner's shoulder. Uncle Horner tells Elhail to go take a break and that he would take care of Durand in the meantime. Elhail hesitates at first, but then agrees and thanks Uncle Horner when Horner says, "I understand you're in a hurry, but that won't change anything. He's the one who should be ready, not you," while referring to Durand. Uncle Horner tells Durand that they should start their leg workouts, to which Durand screams saying no as he dislikes leg workouts. In the next scene, it is nighttime and Elhail, Uncle Horner, and Durand are having dinner together. Elhail asks Uncle Horner whether he is leaving for a place called Steodan the next day. Uncle Horner replies, saying, "I guess I have to. As I heard, it seems like the suppression of the Revolutionary Army is becoming more serious day by day. Well, anyway, I wasn't planning to stay here for that long anyway." Suddenly, a man emerges from the shadows behind Uncle Horner and says they all owe a lot to Uncle Horner. Uncle Horner turns around and says, "You're here." To the person whom we saw at the beginning of the story, and now we know his name is Thomas, "Can't you just stay for a few more days, Uncle Horner?" Durand asks. "Sorry to disappoint you, Durand," Uncle Horner replies. He then slaps Elhail on the back, due to which Elhail feels irritated, and Uncle Horner tells Durand how lucky he is to have Elhail as a teacher, as he is a great wizard, and it's difficult to find such a great teacher like him. He advises Durand not to complain and learn from Elhail as much as possible, after which Durand annoyingly stares at Uncle Horner. Uncle Horner slides an object that looks like a boomerang to Durand, saying it's a farewell gift for Durand. Durand inspects the object in his hand and says that he isn't a kid anymore and doesn't need a toy. Uncle Horner replies, saying that it may look like a normal boomerang, but it has a secret. It's a specially made magic boomerang, which if Durand can utilize with his ability to control the wind, it will be a great weapon. Durand gets up and dashes away from the table. Elhail says, "That kid, where is he going while we're still eating?" Uncle Horner laughs and says that Durand does anything he wants, whenever he wants to, and says that his action remind Uncle Horner of Durand's mother, Rhea. He then tells Elhail not to be too hard on Durand and uses an analogy. To climb a steep hill, you need to walk slowly at the beginning. Elhail then compliments Uncle Horner, saying maybe he is a better teacher than Elhail. Uncle Horner mentions that they are good old friends and they should help each other. Durand goes out of the use to test out his new boomerang. He spots a bird in the sky and prepares to throw the boomerang at the bird. He glares at the bird, setting his target, using his wind power. He throws the boomerang and uses his wind power to hit the bird. The boomerang hits the bird, and the bird is immediately disintegrated. Durand says it was a piece of cake to hit the bird using the boomerang. Uncle Horner and Elhail also come out of the house, and Uncle Horner gets impressed by Durand. Meanwhile, the words told by Uncle Horner roam in Elhail's mind, and he thinks that his age doesn't make him wise. Thomas was watching them through the windows in the house, when suddenly something happens to him and he falls on his knee very abruptly. The sound makes Elhail enter the house, and he immediately rushes towards Elhail, asking him whether he is okay and what happened to him. Thomas closes his eyes and says to himself whether he has reached the limit, which he had feared even though he had been praying that the world would remain peaceful forever as he travels to the past. In the past, we see people in a village frantically running away, screaming that demons have attacked them while the entire village is on fire. We see a demon, one that is similar to the ones chasing Tomas. The demon enters the village, and we see a golden object in the next scene, which the demon has come to take in the village. We see the demon holding the object in his hand, after which we are again back to the present where Uncle Horner is leaving. Uncle Horner apologizes to Durand, saying that today is the day that Durand's mother, Rhea, passed away, and he is sorry as he can't be with Durand, as he is leaving today. Durand asks when Uncle Horner is coming back. He replies saying when the war is over. He reassures Durand, telling him not to worry because he is Mr. Horner, leader of the Stiodan Revolutionary Army. Tomas, while patting Durand on the head, tells him, "Don't you think Horner will feel better leaving if you said goodbye with a smile?" Durand feels sad and says that he knows, but he is worried for Uncle Horner. Uncle Horner promises Durand that he will be back. He tells Elhale to take care of Durand for him, and that he bets Durand will become a great summoner someday. Elhale nods and agrees with Uncle Horner. As Uncle Horner is leaving, Durand yells one more time that he has to come back. Tomas says that the house feels very empty without Uncle Horner. Tomas asks Elhale whether he would be willing to go shopping along with Durand, as soon it will be time for dinner. Elhale agrees and says sure, but Durand scoffs, saying, why can't Elhale go by himself as he too picky and takes a long time to select what he wants to take, and they always get overcharged as Elhale can't haggle. Elhale smacks Durand, and he falls unconscious. Tomas says whether it was necessary to knock Durand out. Elhale says that Durand would not stop bugging Elhale otherwise. Elhale asks whether Tomas is feeling all right. Tomas asks whether Elhale is referring to the incident that happened yesterday and says that he is fine and not to worry about him. Elhale says that it's good to know that he is feeling fine, and Elhale rides off along with Durand on his horse as Tomas waves them goodbye. Tomas enters the house and again collapses as he feels weak and groans. At the market where Elhale and Durand are shopping, Durand scoffs, saying that now that they've bought almost everything they need, shall they head home? Durand thinks to himself, saying, I knew it. It's exhausting shopping with Elhale. How can he spend an hour picking one fruit? Elhale tells Durand to appreciate the fact that they are able to find good apples during the war. Durand gets angry, and there's no big difference in the apples and that Elhale always brings up the war thing. Suddenly, Durand's eyes set upon something. He pauses and sees that they are summon scrolls. A very mysterious man wearing a hood is selling them, with a very creepy smile on his face. Durand tugs on Elhale's bag and asks him whether he can stay at the market alone for a while, and it is just as Elhale said, he will go and explore the market for a bit, with gratefulness. Elhale gives Durand permission, but tells him not to be late, and asks him to keep in mind that today is the day that his mother, Rhea, passed away. As Elhale rides off, Durand waves him off and tells him not to worry, and he will be home soon. Durand goes up to the creepy man selling the summon scrolls and asks him the price. The man replies with a smirk, Hey, young man, do you even know what these are? One of these will cost everything you have right now. Durand grits his teeth as he gets frustrated to hear this. Durand confidently puts his hand on his waist and proudly proclaims, saying, He is not as ordinary as the man might think, and that his mom is a well-known summoner, and he is taught by the great summoner who is a member of the Sky Congress. The man smirks and hands Durand a scroll, and he exclaims in excitement. He becomes overjoyed and celebrates, saying, now he can become a summoner, and then Elhale won't complain about him anymore. He opens the scroll with utter curiosity, only to be bamboozled as the creepy man had played a joke and had not handed him a real scroll, a fake one, in which was written, Bad luck. Durand gets heartbroken at this and looks back, only to see the man and his scrolls were no longer there and had disappeared, as Durand calls the man a fraud. Durand angrily screams, saying, "Ah! Wait until I find you!" Back at the house, nightfall approaches and the crickets are starting to chirp. Elhail has reached home and enters the door, telling Thomas that Durand is running late, so he came back earlier, only to find Thomas lying unconscious on the floor. He goes near Thomas and says he knew Thomas was having problems, telling him to wake up. Thomas wakes up and pants, while telling Elhail, "Now it's time to tell you the truth, Elhail." Elhail gets confused as to what he means by the truth. Thomas begins to tell a story 24 years ago. He says that 24 years ago, Shelkrino, the dangerous ancient relic kept in the Sky Congress, had disappeared, and he, who was working as a proto, Durand's mother Raya, a summoner who was a member of the Sky Congress back then, and Elhail's older sister, Captain Eve, managed to retrieve the relic from the ones who had stolen it. But they didn't bring Shelkrino back to the Sky Congress because they couldn't trust anyone and they didn't want it to be stolen again. So, they decided to keep each piece of Shelkrino separately, where each of them hid their respective pieces, and they did not even tell each other where they hid each piece of Shelkrino. However, shortly after, one of the 3 pieces was taken by enemies, and because of the power of the relic to become one again, the other pieces' hiding places were eventually unveiled to the enemies. Then Tomas says to Elhail that he needed somewhere more secret to hide the relic, and then he opens his shirt to show the relic in his chest, inside his body. Elhail asks Thomas how he can act so recklessly. He replies saying he needed to hide the strong power of Shelkrino. He says that from the power of the relic, he gained some magic power temporarily and succeeded to throw the enemies off track, but now he doesn't have enough strength to endure the power of the relic, he says as he pants. We are left on suspense with Thomas saying to Elhail, "So, Elhail, if anything happens to me?" Elhail says to Thomas, "Then you didn't hurt your left arm during the war and Raya died because of—" Back at the market, Durand screams, "You're fraud! Where did you disappear?" He angrily says that it was all the money he had. Suddenly, an explosion occurs behind him. Durand says that's where his house is. He turns around and, feeling sad, thinking something happened to Elhail, he calls out for Elhail, calling him Daddy Elhail, as he was like a father to Durand. The entire house is on fire in the next scene. Tomas, holding his chest, says to Elhail that this didn't have to happen today and says that he thinks they have unwelcome guests already. He tells Elhail to leave the place immediately. "What are you talking about, Tomas? I can't leave you here all by yourself," Elhail tells Tomas. Tomas says to Elhail to remember what he had promised Tomas before and asks him to keep his promise today. He tells Elhail to take care of Durand. Outside the house, we see the same phantom-like enemies. One of the enemies asks the others to catch Thomas. One of the enemies jumps on Thomas, but Thomas, with a single blow using his staff, knocks out 2 enemies, and they fall way back. Tomas tells Elhail that they have no time, and tells him to go from there and keep Durand far away from there. Elhail says he will and leaves the place. Tomas takes a fighting stance and says, now it's time to greet their unwelcomed guests. The demon asks Tomas for the location of Shelkrino. Tomas replies saying, if he wants the answer, the demon has to knock Tomas down first. The demon says, he has come this far, so why not? The demons talk with each other in their own language, and a demon who looks like a magician throws a fireball at Thomas, which he dodges easily. The demon attacks him head-on with blades, and they go head-to-head in battle. Tomas blocks the demon's attacks and lands a blow so powerful that the demon falls on its back, but it quickly recovers. Thomas thinks to himself, he put quite a bit of strength in that blow, but the demons recover too quickly. The original demon taunts Thomas saying, "Is that all he's got?" Thomas replies, saying not at all, and uses his magic powers to cast a blue flame, which causes a huge explosion. The demons all go in the air due to the explosion and fall back on the ground. Thomas says to the head demon, "Do you think I just waited for you without preparing for this moment?" The demon apologizes to Thomas, saying he underestimated Thomas. Thomas again causes a huge explosion using his magic, while saying that the demon can apologize to him in hell. After the dust settles, he asks whether he has succeeded, only to be attacked ferociously by the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper slashes at Thomas, using his scythe so hard that Thomas slides back due to the force. The Reaper tells Thomas that no matter how much he tries, it's a waste of time. Thomas says that the demon was a summoner but motivates himself, saying that doesn't change anything as he is a protector, and no matter what, he protects what he must protects, but soon stops and says enough is enough, he'll just have to shut the Grim Reaper up. They have a huge battle, as each of them land several blows, and Thomas uses his magic against the demon and the Grim Reaper. Back at the market, Elhail has reached the place where Durand is standing. Durand asks what the flame is about and asks whether something happened, as it looked like it's where their house is. Elhail replies they have no time to explain and have to hurry. Durand asks why Elhail is alone and where his daddy, Thomas, is. Elhail remains speechless for a few seconds and then says he'll explain on the way. But first, they need to find somewhere where Durand can hide safely. Durand retaliates, saying, "No way! Did you really leave my daddy alone?" He grabs Elhail's collar and screams at him, saying how Elhail can leave his daddy alone there. Elhail loses his cool and screams back at Durand, telling him to grow up. He explains to Durand how Thomas is risking his own life to fight against enemies to protest Durand. Durand bursts into tears and asks, "What about Elhail? Elhail is Durand's family too. Then shouldn't he also protect Durand's daddy?" Elhail starts to say, "That's because your daddy wanted you to—" But before he could finish, Durand runs off and gets on the Elhail's horse. Elhail yells at Durand, asking what Durand is doing and that he needs to go somewhere safe. Durand replies, saying, "Elhail can go by himself I'd he wants to, and he'll protect his daddy." In the meantime, back at the house, all the demons have recovered. The head demon says that Thomas's efforts are noble, and if he just give the Shellcrino to the demon and pledges allegiance to him, then he'll let Thomas keep his humble life. Thomas laughs at this, saying that the demon is still looking down on him. He tells the demon to come at him and that the fight isn't over yet. The demon gets angry and begins to plan on attacking Thomas, saying if that's Thomas' choice. But at that moment, Durand appears. Durand calls out to Thomas. Thomas looks back with terror as he is afraid for Durand, and at that moment the Grim Reaper slashes Thomas, splitting him in half right in front of Durand as Durand gets horrified to witness the death of his own father right in front of his eyes. The demon says he won't forget Thomas's last minute. Durand can't do anything except scream out in horror for his daddy. Elhail was also present when Thomas was hit with the fatal blow. He feels sad, saying, "What has he done?" The demon says, "So you're willing to protect the Shellcrino even by sacrificing yourself?" Durand rushes the demon in frustration using the boomerang which Uncle Horner gave him in close combat. The demon blocks Durand's attacks. Durand uses his power to control the wind so that when he throws the boomerang, it will hit the demon. Durand throws the boomerang, but the demon catches it with ease. The demon says that Durand is Thomas's son indeed. Two other demons hold each of Durand's hands and pin him on the ground. The head demon angrily asks Durand where he hid the Shellcrino. Suddenly Iris appears, as she was summoned by Elhail and Blade Rush, slicing the demons using millions of cuts. Elhail's hair changes color due his rage, and he grits his teeth while telling the demons that none of them will be allowed to leave the place. Elhail uses Manhwa Rush, and this destroys 4 of the demons in one go. In the meanwhile, Iris rushes the head demon. The head demon deflects the attack and summons the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper and Iris go into a head-to-head battle. Elhyle gets shocked that the Grim Reaper managed to block it. The demon standing behind the Grim Reaper teases Elhyle, saying, "Elhyle, son of Astar, the great wizard, is this all you have?" Elhyle gets mad at this, and Iris uses Blade Rush again. The Grim Reaper manages to block her attacks, and Iris manages to slip past the Grim Reaper to attack the demon. Iris again swings her sword at the demon. The sword hits the demon on his forearm, and the blow was so immense that the armor that the demon was wearing on his arm shattered to 1,000,000 pieces. The armor shatters to reveal a Badet's tattoo. The demon taunts Iris, saying, "Not bad." Iris again jumps and tries to attack the demon from upwards. The demon says, "You're not bad but not special. It's impossible for you to win over me, who has received grace from the Lord." The demon uses a binding spell to block Iris's attack and trap everyone, including Durand, Elhyle, and Iris also. Elhyle thinks to himself that the demon is using the forbidden binding spell. The demon speaks, saying, "Rage can be the same as a poisoned holy grail. It sweeps you up with silly emotions and makes you forget even about yourself." The demon walks and goes up against Elhyle's face and says that he is lucky as Elhyle's death is not scheduled in his plan, referring to the demon's lord's plan. Elhyle tells the demon to stop it. In the same time, Elhyle removes the summon and dissolves the binding, and again re-summons Iris behind the demon. The demon notices and says to Elhyle that he will never be able to get away from his fate. Iris slashes the demon, but the demon disappears, right in front of Elhyle. Elhyle thinks to himself what the demon meant by the Lord and his fate. Elhyle and Durand go near Thomas. Surprisingly enough, Thomas is still alive after the blow he received, but is severely injured and is on his last breaths. Durand tells Thomas that he'll bring someone to cure him, while sobbing. He asks Elhyle, can't he cure Thomas using his magic? But Elhyle is left speechless. Thomas, on his dying breaths, tells Durand to trust Elhyle no matter what happens, and that Elhyle is his one and only family now, while smiling. He then tells Elhyle to take the Shelkrino. Durand gets shocked to see the Shelkrino in Thomas's chest. Elhyle uses magic to extract the Shelkrino from Thomas's chest. Durand screams at Elhyle, telling him to stop immediately. After the Shelkrino has been extracted, Thomas says on his last few breaths, "Thanks. Now In can go to heaven and meet Raya. Please take care of Durand for me." Thomas dies, and it immediately starts to rain. Durand's eyes swell up with tears, and he cries as his daddy is now gone. After burying his father's dead body, Durand asks Elhyle about his father, what kind of person he was. Elhyle, having a sad countenance, replies that Thomas was a strong man who overcame numerous crises to save the world-torn world of Aliyah. Elhyle concludes that a guy like him would never be able to compete against someone like Thomas. After hearing this, Durand demands to see the object again. He wants to see the reason why his daddy has to sacrifice himself. He wants to know what his dad wanted to protect by sacrificing himself. After some time, Elhyle brings the object and introduces it as Shelkrino, and the only information that Elhyle knows about it is that it's an ancient relic. Durand grits as he sees the relic and tries to touch it, but reflectively his hand moves backwards due to a sudden shock. Elhyle tells Durand to be careful. He says that although he casts a shielding spell, but it's still hardly controllable with his mana. After touching the relic for a mere moment, Durand wonders how much trouble and dangerous it was for his dad to keep this thing contained in his body. Elhyle explains that Thomas wouldn't have been able to cast a shielding spell like him, so to hide the location of Shelkrino from their enemies, the only way for Thomas, who has no ability to control mana, was to hide it in his body. Then, what should we do now? Durand asks abruptly. Elhyle says that he is planning to leave this place tomorrow to head for the Sky Congress because he needs to find out what the relic is and the true identity of the bastards who killed Tomas. Durand turns around and states that they should head to the Sky Congress this instance. Elhail says that Durand is not going with him. Looking back, Durand asks why he can't go. Elhail replies that he has already contacted a person he trusts, so Durand should stay here until he comes back. Durand shouts that he can't sit back or hide and do nothing when his dad was murdered in front of his very eyes. He shouts that he deserves to be there as the son of Tomas. Elhail pretends to ignore Durand and says that the person will come here tomorrow. Durand's eyes get teary as he speaks, that he will be of help, and he will never get in Elhail's way. He will be stronger than now and will become a summoner. Elhail shouts out of frustration that he can't lose Durand, too. Elhail walks back while telling Durand that he needs time to get himself together. Elhail says that he is heading home and Durand should come after some time when he is thinking straight. Durand clenches his hand in anger. The thoughts that Elhail must know something more than this weigh on his mind. The words that the demon previously said to Elhail that Elhail's death is not scheduled in his plan yet haunts Durand. What were those words back then? He thinks as he suspects Elhail for not revealing the exact truth. Since reaching home, Elhail has been using shielding magic to guard the relic, and finally it's settled perfectly. He notices that it's been less than a day, but the power of the shielding is already getting weaker. It's too much for him to shut its strength. Suddenly thinking that Tomas was securing something this strong inside his body for that long makes Elhail sad yet angry at the same time. At that moment, Durand comes running, shouting Elhail's name. Durand concludes that Elhail already knows who killed his dad. Huh? What are you talking about? Elhail asks, while being puzzled. Durand states that previously in the fight, he listened to that bastard who definitely said that Elhail's death is not scheduled in his plan yet. Elhail says that it's a misunderstanding because he also doesn't know anything about it either. Durand claims that Elhail is lying. Tell me! Who were they? Or it was you who orchestrated it all because you were also looking for Shelo? Durand asks as he staggers. Hearing all these coming from Durand's mouth makes Elhail extremely sad. He asks how come Durand can't trust him after all this. He states that for him, both Tomas and Durand are his precious family. Then why did they say that? How come they know who you are? Durand questions. He shouts as he concludes that Elhail has been lying the whole time, and now he doesn't need anything anymore. Suddenly, the shielding of the relic starts to crack. Elhail wonders how can the shielding spell starts to lose its effect so quickly. Durand states that he won't trust anybody anymore as his eyes turn pink. How can the shielding spell lose all of its power already? Was its binding too loose? If not, did it explode by itself? What on earth is happening? Countless questions come into Elhail's mind at the same time. Then he notices that the relic is reacting because of Durand, and maybe now it wants Durand as its host. Durand starts to walk towards the relic. Elhail grabs Durand by his shoulders and tells him to get away from the relic, but the sudden power spark makes Elhail blind for a moment, and since he has spent almost all of his mana, he doesn't have enough to endure this power outburst. He shouts telling Durand that he shouldn't let this power dominate him. Meanwhile, Durand has already entered the relic's consciousness. He wonders where he is and what's this place. Suddenly, some past scenes come into view. The same scene we saw at the beginning, Tomas running and absorbing the Shelo into his body. Another scene comes into view. This time it's the scene when Durand was a baby and his mother, Raya, holding her dear son. This scene makes Durand cry. The next moment, the scene changes and portrays the very last moments of Raya. Tomas was telling Raya that a healer will be here soon, so she should hold until the healer arrives. Raya replied that her monster Vernand protected the Shelo, so there's nothing to worry about. Tomas replied that Raya means everything to him. He told Raya that she shouldn't worry about the relic right now, since Raya carved her monster into the Shelo in order to protect the relic. As she took her last breath, Raya said that Vernand will also protect Tomas, and she is sorry to leave him behind. She told him to take care of their baby Durand for her. Lastly, Tomas cries. The scene starts to get blurred and ends. Durand gets horrified and pauses. He says that he doesn't like it and doesn't want to see these scenes. Finally, the last scene of Tomas dying appears. Also appears the words that Tomas told Durand before. To trust Elhail no matter what, since he is Durand's only family now. The final hard and painful moments of Tomas when Elhail was extracting the Shelkrino breaks Durand again. He yells to stop as tears come out of his eyes. After this, Durand hears a voice, which is the voice of the Shelkrino. The voice tells Durand that these are the memories of his father, who hosted Shelkrino into his body. Who are you? Durand asks. The voice states that he is the remains of the Absolutes who created this world, and at the same time, a creature who foretells the fate of Alea, according to their providence. After hearing this, Durand questions the relic whether his daddy was killed because of him. Shelkrino replies that it was a perfect ending for a creation who ran away from their fate of destruction. It also states that the day to decide the fate of Alea will come soon. This makes Durand very angry to know the fact that his dad deserved to die from the very beginning, according to the relic. Reflexively, Durand produces some magic power in his hand and goes to attack the relic. Then he realizes that he can't move an inch and gets sucked in. Lastly, the Shelkrino tells Durand whether he continues the endless circle of destruction or destroys it, is totally up to him. With a sudden shock, Durand wakes up and we see that the relic has made Durand its host. Durand! Are you all right? Elhail asks. Elhail thinks that maybe the relic choosing Durand was all written in his fate. Upon waking up, Durand states that he will be strong, stronger than now, stronger enough to prove to the whole world that the deaths of his late parents weren't meaningless. That day, Elhail promised Durand that they'd meet again someday in the future, and since that day, 4 years had already passed. Two people are having a chat. One person talks about the mysterious thief who has been robbing the black markets in the north. The other person, who is quite healthy and bald, replies that he has also heard of the thief. Moreover, he has also heard that whenever there is a black market open, the thief has never failed to devastate it. The more surprising and weird fact is that the thief previously made a mess but stole nothing. They both wonder whether it's a false rumor or not. But why did you bring that up? The healthy person asks. The other person replies that it's because there was a black market open in the north a few days ago and nothing happened. The healthy person doesn't understand what the other is talking about. The thin, bald person explains that the black markets are open in the north and here only, and if nothing is happening in the north, means that the thief must have moved here. The healthy person tells the other not to worry because this Quastasia is dominated by Paytan already, so maybe the thief was safe in the north by luck, but if he tries to do the same thing here, the so-called thief will lose his life. The thin person replies that the thief is not an ordinary guy either, because according to the rumors, he is a wizard. As they are talking, a sudden wind blows and the bread flies away along with a greenish mana. At that moment, our MC Durand appears. He says that he thinks these people were having an interesting conversation, so he asks them whether they would mind if he joins them.